Alright, so here we're looking at this boat. Just showed up to it. Come on, let's take a quick look around. 28-foot shoreliner, Searay. 28-foot Searay from 1985. Galvanized trailer. Looking at the tires. You hear that in the background. I just looked at the tire over here. One of them needs pumping up. So I bought this new product. First time ever used it. It's a Bitumen air pump. So it's small, compact, and not only does it have a jump start capacity for your battery, but it also fills up the tire. It can go up to, I believe, 138 PSI. Obviously on this one we don't. I'm just setting it to 50. When we got here it was 32 PSI and it really looked flat. For buying scrap boats, this has been handy today. I used to carry around either an air compressor or an air tank. It was slow, cumbersome, and heavy. This, it's taken me about 4 minutes, I'd say, to go from 31 PSI up to the 49 that we're at now. It's supposed to turn off when it hits the 50. We'll see. Just like that. Turned off by itself. So I'll say it's very convenient. Like I said, first time ever doing this. Took 3 or 4 minutes. Look how small that is. Very small, convenient. Pumping up that air tire didn't even change the battery capacity. I foresee myself using this extensively. Now while we're here with the tires too, one thing I always look at on a trailer when I'm looking at tires, and I'm going to be pulling this thing, is the bearings. I've had a bearing go out on the side of I-75 in Detroit. Not a fun experience. I had my whole tire fall off. Ever since then, every time I check my tire bearings. The way I do it, the way I was shown to do it, try to shake the tire. If you can feel it slide back and forth, kind of get a little bit of a clunking noise, a clunk, 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 it's loose. You're going to have to take this off, tighten it up. I'll show that in another video when I have one, because this one is fully tight. All 4 tires, I checked the other side already. All 4 tires, no shake at all. Should be solid. Saves me time and energy to not have to do that. One of the other main things I look at when I come to look at a boat like this is the outdrive. Because the trailer's generally got the most value. The outdrive and engine have the next. The engine is very difficult to tell until you actually get it out, because if it's got a crack in it from improper winterization, it's worth very little. I generally have to just look at what make model it is and go from there, kind of assume the worst, because it generally is cracked. The outdrive is the next biggest value outside of the trailer. So I always take a look at it, see if the skeg is broke at all. Again, make model, make sure it matches, overall condition. This is a Mercruiser, but this one's an SEI, so this is a remanufactured part, aftermarket outdrive. The gentleman told me it only had about 2 hours on. So that's a nice drive. I'll show you how to take that off later, but that is one of the things when I look at how much money I'm going to spend on a boat, that's critical. That and the trailer is where the money's going to be at. Alrighty, so we're going to get into scrapping this shortly. We're going to take apart different pieces, parts off of it that are going to have value, and I'll share also with you what the local landfill requires to be out of the boat prior to taking it there. And then we'll show you the actual taking it to the dump. Got a surprise or two in store for you there. Alrighty, we made it back safely. Want to do a quick overview on the boat. Let's look around and take a look at it. One thing we did do to get it home, ratchet strap the outdrive up. They should have enough hydraulic fluid in the cylinders to keep it upright. Don't ever trust him. Going over railroads or railroad tracks, big pothole, I've seen him bounce and hit the ground. If you break that skeg off on the road, you lose a lot of value. So I always have that little extra insurance with a ratchet strap. But come on, let's take a quick look at it. It's a 1985 Searay Sundancer 28-footer on a roller galvanized trailer. Now the galvanized trailers, some people like them, some people don't from looks perspective. But the nice thing about galvanized is this trailer's 30 years old and there's hardly any rust on it, right? Great shape. Galvanized trailers tend to sell for a bit more. Also, one thing I noticed on this when I'm looking at it, the tires. Tires are good tread, no weather cracking along the outside, and there's even still some of the little nipples of the rubber. It means these tires are pretty new. I've not seen a whole lot of use. Dry, weather cracked tires don't sell for as much. You won't get quite as much off your trailer. Good thing to look for when you're buying a boat. So come on around, let's take a look at it. Let's go inside of it. This one came with canvas on it. Now, when you go to sell, everyone's area might be slightly different, right? In my area, things like canvas, little pieces and parts, trim pieces, if you will, have never sold well. As my wife would tell you, I'm a bit of a pack rat. I like to keep all the little stuff, but you can only keep so much, and if it doesn't sell, why keep it? So come on, let's take a quick look. Alrighty, my better half's throwing already out some of the other stuff she found in there already. Some orange life jackets. One other thing I'll point out is, like I said, I'm a bit of a pack rat. I like to keep stuff and like to repurpose stuff. One of my big things on all these boats, I love to repurpose things. I don't like seeing things just go to the landfill if I can use them. These big piano hinges, I tend to save all of them I get on boats. Why? I use them on deer stands for deer stand windows. I know, weird, but it would have been a couple of dollars a piece that I would have had to pay for when I build my stand. So why not get it for here from free and reuse it? One less thing in the landfill. Okay. Alrighty. So one thing I also look at while I'm looking at a prospective boat, when I'm looking to buy one, is look at the engine. Like I've said before, the engines are difficult to necessarily see the inside, whether they're cracked or not. Most often they are, and especially when you have a seller next to you, it's difficult. So here's the engine in this one. V8 Mercruiser. I would imagine it's the small block, but we'll see. By the tag here, it's the two. Get you in there. It's a 260 horsepower at 350 CID. So that's the big block, 350 cubic inch. The big things for value on these when you're looking at one is going to be whether these water jackets are cracked along the bottom or the block itself. Let me take you around. Let's see if I can get at that water jacket. Very difficult on most boats to tell until you pull them out, because they always crack along the bottom. Generally right along in here. I can sometimes feel them. More often than not, I can't. This one I really can't get in there close enough to see. So this is the unknown. The engines are always big unknowns with the value of these. I'm looking at it, it looks very clean, but I won't know. If it's cracked block, it's worth only a little bit more in scrap metal. If it's not cracked in any way and turns over nice and it's like a running engine, it's worth money. That's the big gamble. All right. Some of the other things I always look for when I'm looking at boats is the little stuff, the little extras. Fenders. Boat hooks. Like this is a West Marine boat hook. This is one of those things that doesn't really give you a lot of value. It doesn't tell me whether I buy a boat or not, but I'll get 10 bucks off of it. So why not? It's a little positive. In fact, this one even has a second one on it. Again, just added money, added value. Let's head on in. The way in, controls. Again, my area, controls, steering wheels don't sell for much of anything, but they're still cool. That ship-to-shore radio, the gentleman I purchased it from said it was new. I don't know if it is or not. You never can tell. However, if it is, again, 10 bucks. Not a big deal, but it's something. Even a cool sign. Some of these old boats have some of the coolest little things on it, like this one. Alrighty. And heading on inside the boat itself, the cabin, gentleman said they redid all of the upholstery in here. All of the seats, seat rests, all new. And I'd believe them. They look really nice. Good shape. Again, they don't generally sell for much, but I don't know. Since they're all brand new or like new, maybe you'll get some bucks off of it. For a camper. Could be for a camper, another boat. Generally, it'd probably be for something boat similar to this one, but you never know. I always like opening up all the little cuddies and cabins, doors. Who knows what you'll find. This one's pretty empty. Sometimes you find things like extra anchors, life jackets, decent Dometic head. All of which just adds up a little bit of extra value. Not a ton of extra money, but a few bucks here, a few bucks there. Why not? Boat looks like it was quite a nice family boat at one point in time. Alrighty, heading back out. One thing I noticed from the outside, see if we can get to it, is the anchor, and it's called a bow pulpit. That's what holds the anchor up on the bow. Now this one's a wooden bow pulpit. This part here, it's called the pulpit. But then this piece of metal right here, it's gonna be worth a couple bucks. Decent, nice anchor, Danforth style, which is the most popular style in my area. Good for sandy, muddy bottoms. Chain and line. Now generally the rope and / line that I get is not in generally that good a shape, so I don't normally keep it. But that's a nice piece of chain and a nice anchor. Probably get 25, 30 bucks for it. Again, nice little added tidbit. Alrighty, so now we're gonna take this outdrive off. This is a standard Mercruiser setup. This is a Alpha 1 Gen 1. This particular one is the SEI, like we said. It's the aftermarket one. It comes off the same. Now, what I'm going to show you how to take this off, it's the same whether it's the Alpha 1 Gen 1, whether it's the pre-Alpha or the MR from the earlier years, the pre-1985 models. They come off the same. You're going to need a 5/8 inch socket. I like an extender because it makes it a little easier. Also, you're going to need a wrench of some variety or another socket to pull the trim cylinders off. It's going to have a nut on each side normally. This one has already been played with a little bit when the guy was putting this on because he never ended up using it. So normally you'd be taking one side off or the other, spin the other one off. We'll get to that one in a minute. This one thing is how it's already partly done. I'm going to lift it up, take these blocks out, lower it down. As you can see, these trim cylinders aren't even on. Normally they'd be coming right through here. You know, this piece would be right here. The only difference between this setup and the Alpha 1 Gen 2s is that these are clipped on instead of nut and bolt. There's a little cap, you pop it off, and it's a spring clip that you pull off instead of a nut. Otherwise, even Gen 2s are the same disassembly. So you're going to have 6 nuts to spin off. Three on each side. Alrighty, so now that I got all 6 bolts off, 3 on each side, we're going to be pulling the outdrive off. It's not mechanically attached any longer, so we have these off and the nuts. I like to get all the washers off. Sometimes when you're pulling off, if they're tight, it kind of like cams into place and kind of locks it up a bit. So one thing on these that's helpful, you may not notice right off the bat, is on each side, come on in, let me show you. Right here in the housing, there's a slot. You can fit a screwdriver into it. I use a fairly thick flathead. And you can start to inch the drive out a little bit. You are going to mess up the gasket, but if you're pulling it apart, you're going to put a new gasket on if you were doing this for a repair job. As I'm scrapping it, don't care. So we're going to pull it off. The longer that it's sat together, the harder it is to pull off, as could be expected. This one, seeing as how it's a replacement, has not been on very long, so it's coming off very easily. I have to cut these straps holding all this together to get it out.
Okay.
All right, so we're gonna pull this off. Save all this stuff. And this is just separating, of course, so the drive can slip out. Swim decks, very helpful for tool storage and part storage. All right. And there you have it. The drive is off. Simple as that. These, even the ones that are stuck on there, you can have the outdrive off on a Mercruiser couple minutes, 5 minutes maybe. When you get into like the Volvo Pentas or the Chrysler motors and outdrives from the 80s and earlier, they can be a pain. I'll show you one of those in an upcoming video and how to take them apart. They're much more complicated. But Merc Cruisers, simple and easy. So something to know when you're going to sell an outdrive, know what engine it came off of and what the gear ratio is on them. 1 to 50, 1 to 65, 1 to 94 are all common depending on the horsepower. But some horsepower engines could have several different gear ratios. On a genuine Merc Cruiser, it'll be stamped right up here, generally on the port side of the boat. This one doesn't appear to have it on it. Again, it's the SEI version, but a Merc Cruiser should have it stamped there. Sometimes very light, but it'll have the number 184 or 150, and it'll generally have an R for standard rotation, unless you're dealing with a twin engine setup. But for those of us looking for inexpensive boats to scrap, don't get twins often. Alrighty, so now we're inside. Before I start disassembling everything off the engine, taking the engine out, I like to see if it'll turn over by battery power, under its own power, as it were. It helps when it comes to sell. Now, this guy had winterized this motor, but I noticed the spark plugs are out of it. Why? Not 100% sure. I don't know that I've ever seen that before. But here we go. We're going to give it a try, see if she'll just turn over by its own power. I'm not looking for it to actually start at the moment. I'm just curious to see if it'll turn over. And apparently shoot out the antifreeze. That's interesting. It looks like, yeah, the way it's beating, it looks more like antifreeze, but it's a interesting rusty color antifreeze coming out of the cylinders. So, I'm guessing out of the spark plug holes. So, yeah, that's going to be interesting. When I get her out, I'll take a look at her a little more carefully and see what's up. But at least it does turn over under its own power. That's very nice to know. All right, so now we're going to pull the engine out. A couple things I want to point out, the easiest ways of doing this. All Merc Cruisers have these two bolts in the back. They're holding the engine on to this piece here. That one and that one. They got really fine threads. You're going to have to turn it quite a lot of times. It's also, every one I've ever done is 3/4 inch. Every time. Get yourself an extension, even the longer one if you want, and we're going to pull those off. Also, both exhaust manifolds on this come into these elbows. You can take it off at any one of these points, but it works by far better to take them off down here. Back off the hose clamps all the way. Ideally, take them off completely, because it is amazing how even just a little bit on there will kink it and make it so much harder to yank this thing out. But taking them off down here helps. So now let's take them off. Alrighty, finally got that engine out. What a pain.
Took forever. That's why I ended up stopping the video, because y'all would be getting bored if you're trying to watch that many hours of video. Anyways, I ended up having to pull it up part way, put a piece of well, the deck piece back on here, set the motor on it to lift it up again, because my tractor couldn't quite get it up over this lip here. Didn't have quite the lift capacity, but she's out. Alright, next up, gas tank. Now, my landfill says you have to have the gas tank removed prior to dumping the boat. So, we're going to have to get this tank out. It's a 100-gallon aluminum tank, about 4 feet wide. It goes from about here, just past the opening on this side, to about the opening on that side. And one other thing, it's tight in there. So we're going to end up having to slide it out here into the engine compartment and then try to lift it up. Before I do that, though, I took all the nuts off, or the bolts off the sending unit. I want to see how much is in it, because it is a 100-gallon tank. Don't know if you can see in there very well, but it's about 80% full. My experience with these boats is almost always when people go to park it and leave it, they fill it up. Why? I don't really know, but it's almost universal that these tanks are 3/4 plus full. So now I've got about 75-80 gallons of bad gas in here that I got to drain out first before I can even hope to lift this tank out. This tank by itself is probably over, well, probably close to 100 pounds worth of aluminum, but with all that gas in it, that's going to be way too heavy. So I'm going to rig up a system to start draining this tank. Alright, when it comes time to start taking off this labyrinth of stuff, basically the inner transom piece and the outer transom piece, you're not going to get both of them out. You got to do both to get both. The gimbal housing and this. Some engines are worth it, sometimes it's not, depending on your market. But right now, with aluminum being 50 cents a pound, it's worth doing. The first thing to do is going to be taking off the exhaust elbow. It's going to be two of those bolts on the top and 2 on the bottom. Now, helpful hint on that, they're always 10 millimeter, but get that multi, like the 16.1, your standard 8-point will not work at all. Believe me, I've tried many times. It's a pain. So I went up to the hardware store. I bought 2 of these, specifically the 10 millimeters, and I set them aside. There's all on pegboard in my shop. The only thing I use them for is this. They don't get touched for anything else. Sometimes these are a royal pain in the rear too. They put them in challenging locations sometimes. And come back to that one. The bottom 2 are very difficult to see, but figure, see where the top ones are and go down directly underneath them. Tends to be where they're at. Sometimes in this boat, like this boat's a little bigger, you can actually get in there and see a little bit. A lot of times you can't. You just kind of have to feel around with your hands and hope you get it. Alright, that worked. I'm not really on the bolt very much, but just enough to get it. A lot of times with these boats, it's a matter of try something and hope it works. Alright, so now there's this piece off. Again, every market's different. Your market might be different, but I can't sell these. I put them up for $5 and won't get $5 off them. So, scrap aluminum it is. Now, for the inner transom assembly, there's going to be a bunch of 5/8 inch nuts. Here, 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 there, there. And then you got to take this off. Now, sometimes there's 2 3/4 inchers and the rest are 5/8. I honestly have no idea what Mercruiser engineers were thinking when they designed these things, because a lot of it just doesn't seem to make much sense to me. Alright. Like I said, sometimes they do put 3/4 on. In this case, it's those bottom 2. I really have nothing. I don't know why they would do 5/8 on the other 6 and then 2 3/4. I don't get it, but that's what it is. Alrighty. So now that's off, except for the steering assembly. Now, if you're going to be keeping the steering assembly for some reason, steering pump and such, you're going to have to be more careful in taking it off, of course. Bring it in here. For me, I generally just cut the cable off and take it out as a whole unit because it's just going for scrap. Again, it's scrap aluminum, 50 cents a pound. Other than that, I've never been able to sell one. So, that's up to you to see how you do it. Your area, of course, but now we'll take this off. Oh, this copper is good scrap as well. I don't normally deal with a lot of the smaller wires in these boats because there just isn't enough value to it. Copper's not worth all that much. But this heavy battery cable is. I don't remember what the exact amount was last time I went in, but it was definitely worth taking out. Lastly, there's a pin on the inside here that's holding the steering arm to this, which goes out to the gimbal side, the outside. Got to get that off. You got a cotter pin on the bottom, which can be a bit of a pain to get at. Some days it's easier than other days. Now, generally, you can get that pin out from the top. Sometimes you gotta persuade it a little from the bottom side. Yes, I know you're not supposed to use a screwdriver as a pry bar. Sometimes, well, it happens. Alrighty. That pin off. Slides off. Get it off here. And then there is a safety grounding wire that goes to that as well. Phillips head or universal key. Get all the hoses and cables and whatnot and such out. I'm a big believer in the universal key, especially when I'm not going to be doing anything with this. Again, you're going to want to be much more careful if you're going to try to sell something, but it's just scrap metal. Now we will help get the outside gimbal off by hammering these out. Now we'll go to the outside with a crowbar. Alright. Sometimes you can use these as levers and work it out. But like I said, this guy's already done a number of things to this boat, so it might not work that way. But there you go. That's out. Not something you have to take out on a boat, at least at the landfill I go to. But this is 50, 60 pounds of mixed aluminum steel. It's worth money. Alrighty. To drain the tank, I normally use that hand pump. It seems to be not functioning. So this boat had a 12-volt pump for the freshwater system. I just borrowed some hoses from the freshwater system, put it into the tank. Now I expect, since that was a water pump from the beginning, first off, of course, you can never use it for fresh water again, but I suspect the gasoline may break down the diaphragms in it. But I'm going to flush it with fresh water afterwards and see if I can use it another time.
Worked better than I thought it would.
Other way.
And don't hit props. We're trying to sell these.
She can't say what it
Maddie, and you can smile too. I got that.
Alright, another good thing to take off the boat that I like to take off is the rub rail. Goes all the way around the boat, of course, and it's made out of aluminum. Again, aluminum's going for a good bit right now, so I like to take it all off. I imagine the rub rail off this is probably going to be about $15 to $20 worth of aluminum. It's got this rubber plasticky insert, which is what actually bumps up against whatever you hopefully don't hit with your boat. This one's cracked pretty badly. It's worn out, so I break it out along the whole line. On other boats, you can just peel it out. You'll get twice as much for the aluminum when it's clean aluminum as dirty aluminum. This one's riveted in instead of screwed. About 50-50 on boats as to which is which. Best way, you could drill all those rivets out, but I like to just take a crowbar and start breaking it. Alright, once you get it started, the other thing you can do is pull it out, pop it down, and just break the rivet heads off. Do this someplace where you're not going to have issues with the rivet heads getting in tires. Don't do it on your driveway.
watching?